Have you ever felt like you're being suffocated by unreasonable rules just because someone else has taken it upon themselves to decide how you should live your life? I once felt that way when Karen, the HOA president of my neighborhood, decided to trim the bushes I had carefully tended for years, simply because they didn't fit her so-called aesthetic standards. But instead of submitting, I did something no one expected. I built a strong wall, a wall that might just make her reconsider everything forever. Before you continue watching this video, I just want to ask one question. Would you dare to stand up against the unreasonable rules imposed on your life? This video will give you the answer, and don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the next part of the journey. I never thought I would become a rebel in a quiet neighborhood. But maybe sometimes life forces us to stand up, not to break the rules, but to protect ourselves from those who manipulate everything in the name of the rules. My name is Johnson, a construction engineer specializing in residential home design for over 15 years. I used to think I knew every regulation, every standard, until the day I moved to Sunnyside Estates, a picture-perfect neighborhood that hid something quite unusual beneath the surface. Right when I signed the house purchase agreement, the former owner said something that stuck with me. The HOA here is strict, especially the president. I just chuckled and thought to myself, I'm an engineer. Rules might be strict, but I probably follow them better than they do. 3 days after moving in, I realized the warning wasn't exaggerated. The doorbell rang, not the friendly kind, but a sharp, striking sound like a judge's gavel. Standing at my door was a woman in a pristine white suit, a pearl necklace gleaming in the afternoon sun, and golden, voluminous hair locked in place with enough hairspray to withstand a Category 10 hurricane. That was Karen Wilkins, the president of the Homeowners Association, HOA, here. "Welcome to Sunnyside Estates," she said with a smiling voice, though her eyes didn't smile. And before I could respond, she firmly shoved into my hand a thick, leather-bound handbook with gold-embossed letters on the cover. Sunnyside Estates, Community Guidelines. I was surprised by how heavy it was. 78 pages, not ordinary bylaws, but rules so detailed I thought I was reading a blueprint for a government-grade building. For example, not only did the house have to be painted in a neutral color, but only 12 specific shades of beige were allowed, each with its own code like military ranks. Yard statues couldn't exceed 8 inches in height. Garden flowers had to be selected from an approved list, categorized by season and color, to match the community aesthetic. I thought I knew what detail meant, but she had taken detail to a whole new level, an absolute level of control. I nodded, gave a polite smile, and closed the door. That evening, among unopened moving boxes, I sat down and read every single page of that handbook. And do you know what the strangest part was? I decided I would follow it all, every clause, every restriction. Not because I feared Karen, but because I wanted to prove, even within the most suffocating framework, someone can comply flawlessly and give no one a reason to interfere. I cut my grass to exactly 3.5 inches. I painted my door in the exact code Sandstone Whisper, the only beige allowed for east-facing corner houses. My mailbox, trash bins, even the type of porch light I used, everything adhered strictly to the approved standards. I became the model citizen in the eyes of the HOA, and for the first 6 months, Karen practically passed by my house without a word. A silent badge of honor few ever earned. I thought I had won, until the day I planted a hedge, and that was when the real battle began. I still remember very clearly the day I decided to plant a green hedge along the edge of my lot. It wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a personal declaration. My property sits on a corner, adjacent to a fairly busy road. A row of lush arborvitae, tall enough but not too tall, would separate me from the noise and the prying eyes of passers-by, and of course, from the ever-watchful eyes of the HOA. I did my research, thoroughly. Page 42, Section 6. Natural hedges are permitted, provided they do not exceed 6 feet in height and do not obstruct visibility at intersections. I selected a species listed in Appendix C, hired a landscaping company from the HOA's approved partners list, and had the hedge planted at exactly 5 feet 10 inches tall, set back 15 feet from the intersection, 5 feet more than required. I took before and after photos, measured every distance with a laser rangefinder. I left no loophole uncovered. For the next 3 weeks, everything was peaceful. The green hedge stood tall, quietly fulfilling its role, a gentle yet dignified screen. I thought this time I had won. Until that afternoon. I came home only to find Karen Wilkins standing on my lawn, flanked by 2 unfamiliar men wielding electric trimmers, tearing into my hedge as if it were wild weeds. The once lush leaves now lay scattered, and the row of trees had been reduced to bare stumps, like flagpoles stripped in the middle of a battlefield. I rushed over, heart pounding, trying to stay calm. "Karen, what the hell is going on?" She turned around, a faint smile barely visible beneath her designer sunglasses. "Oh, Johnson, your hedge violates Section 4.7b. It's a traffic visibility issue. As president, I'm authorized to act immediately when there's a safety risk. You'll receive the invoice, $400 for the removal service." I was stunned. No warning letter, no direct notice, no chance to make adjustments. And the visibility flag marker she pointed to, there was absolutely no way it had been there that morning. That night, I sat alone under the desk lamp, reopening the thick handbook she had given me on day 1. But this time, not to follow the rules, but to find the loopholes. She had declared war, and I would strike back with the very rules she imposed. That night, I reread every line in the HOA handbook like a lawyer preparing for a life or death trial. And then, I found the golden loophole, a regulation most people overlooked, buried in dry bureaucratic text. Permanent structures used as fences, including brick walls, are permitted up to a maximum height of 6 feet, provided they comply with county building codes and are approved by the Architectural Review Committee, AR. If no response is received from the committee within 14 days of submission, the project shall be considered automatically approved. I stared at that line, like a warrior who had just found his sword. "Fine, Karen. If you won't let me plant trees, I'll build a wall. A wall you won't be able to touch." Being an engineer gave me an advantage. The next morning, I drew up a full technical blueprint, 3D renderings, and a detailed material specification sheet with desert tan paint, exactly the color tone approved by the HOA. I packaged everything into a thick submission file, complete with material certifications and a printed copy of the relevant bylaw. I didn't send an email. I submitted the file via certified mail with a signed delivery receipt, and the signature on that receipt was none other than Karen Wilkins. Then I waited. The first week passed in silence. I called the HOA office. The staff said, "The committee is still reviewing." Week 2, I called again. Same answer. But I knew the truth. Karen had never passed the file to anyone on the committee. She thought she could bury it, hide it, and make me give up. Karen didn't realize that was her biggest mistake. On day 15, I rented an excavator. The first roar of the engine across my lawn sounded like a declaration. Not even an hour later, Karen's SUV screeched to a halt, brakes screaming like the police had arrived at a crime scene. She jumped out, her face red as a beet, high heels sinking into the soft ground. "What are you doing? You're not allowed to build a wall. I'm calling the police." I shut off the engine, stepped down, and handed her the project file with the official date stamp, along with the delivery receipt bearing her own signature. "According to Clause 7.3 of your own regulations, I've been automatically approved, and I will continue building, legally, brick by brick. Karen froze in the afternoon sun. She had nothing to say, and I climbed back onto the excavator, continuing my work, with a quiet smile and a resolve that could not be shaken. From the moment the first shovel touched the ground, I knew I had triggered an earthquake in the tiny world Karen Wilkins tried so hard to control. But I also knew she wouldn't just stand by and watch each brick stack up like a statement defying her authority, and I didn't have to wait long. Less than an hour after I started construction, Karen's silver SUV screeched to a halt in front of my house, the tires shrieking against the pavement like the desperate cry of a collapsing regime. She stepped out, red-faced and flustered, heels sinking into the soil, arms flailing as if directing traffic in a storm. "Stop this right now! You are not allowed to build this wall. This is unauthorized. I'm calling the police." I calmly shut off the engine, hopped off the excavator, and held a thick plastic-bound folder in my hand. I presented the submission packet with the date stamp, along with the certified mail receipt clearly bearing the signature of one Karen Wilkins. "You received this file exactly 15 days ago. According to Clause 7.3, I've been automatically approved due to no response within the required time frame." I spoke with a steady, even tone, like I was giving a technical presentation. Karen paused. In her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before: hesitation. But of course she didn't back down. The next day, I received a new violation notice: improper storage of construction materials, demanding I remove everything within 24 hours or face a $50 per day fine. I read carefully. The rules allow materials to remain on-site for up to 7 days during active construction. I rented a storage container, placed it exactly 17 feet from the curb, 1 foot more than the required distance. When Karen returned, clipboard in hand, scanning for something to write down, and found nothing, her expression was priceless. She didn't stop there. She called the county building inspector, hoping to catch me building without a permit. But this time, Karen picked the wrong opponent. I had followed every single step, secured a building permit, submitted the design plans, passed the foundation inspection. The inspector arrived, reviewed the documents, took detailed measurements, then turned to me and gave a light pat on the shoulder. "To be honest, this is one of the nicest residential walls I've ever seen. You've done even better than the minimum requirements." I simply smiled. Karen stood at a distance, motionless, and for the first time since I moved into Sunnyside Estates, she had nothing left to say. I thought building the legal wall would be the end of the battle, but I was wrong. Because while Karen was scrambling to find ways to stop me, I began to realize something much bigger. And this time, it wasn't about the height of the fence or misplaced trash cans. It was money. A lot of money. It all started when the building inspector stopped by to check on my project. During our conversation, I casually mentioned that the HOA had removed my fence without notifying me. He nodded, then dropped a comment that made me stop in my tracks. "By the way, the fountain at the neighborhood entrance is also under review because we haven't seen any permits for it. They've been saying the paperwork is in progress for months." I went straight to the main entrance that very afternoon. It was a decorative fountain I clearly remembered. Karen had written an entire section in the HOA newsletter last month, calling it the cultural hallmark of Sunnyside. But now, I started to see it for what it really was: a mark of something else. A simple search through the county's public records revealed that the HOA had never submitted any building permit applications for the project. What's more, the nearly $30,000 expense to build it had never been approved in any community meeting minutes. I started digging deeper. And then, I turned to Mrs. Chen, the neighbor 3 houses down, who had been the HOA treasurer, until Karen accidentally pushed her off the board 2 years ago. In her perfectly manicured garden, Amid jasmine tea and dusty file stacks, a part of the truth slowly began to emerge. The landscaping costs doubled after Karen hired her brother-in-law's company, Mrs. Chen told me, her eyes fixed on the numbers. When I asked for invoices, they told me I no longer had access, and this is residents' money. I spent nights piecing it all together. Unreported expenses, shady contracts, and clear signs of corruption. I even discovered a $5,000 unaccounted transfer from the HOA fund to a friend's personal account. After 3 weeks of investigation, I completed a 20-page report, complete with appendices, invoices, internal emails, and a scan of the meeting minutes that had been conveniently hidden. On the cover page, I placed a single sentence, "This is the person managing our money. Do you feel secure?" The brick wall I built was just the beginning. Now it was time to build a truth that Karen could never tear down. I will never forget the feeling when I walked into that annual meeting. The entire neighborhood was there, packed into the room, with fluorescent lights overhead casting shadows of every face. All eyes were on Karen, who always sat in the chairman's chair, wearing a self-satisfied expression as if she were the queen of the whole neighborhood. But this time, everything was different. Karen held the report that I had just handed out to everyone, her face tilted up, as if to assert her absolute power. But that evening wasn't just any regular meeting. Mrs. Chen, who never spoke unless necessary, suddenly stood up. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned toward her. No one thought Mrs. Chen could do this. She had quietly built her strength in the shadows, and now the moment had come. "Karen, I demand a vote of no confidence." Mrs. Chen's voice was cold but clear. I felt an indescribable excitement. Every gaze started to look unfamiliar. It seemed like Karen's reign was about to end. Karen looked back, the faint smile on her face quickly fading. "Mrs. Chen, you don't understand. I'm doing this for the greater good of the neighborhood." Her voice was hurried, but I could detect the flicker of anxiety in her sharp eyes. And then, the vote began. Until the very last moment, I couldn't believe that Karen would be overthrown right in front of me. But the result was undeniable. Karen was ousted on the spot. There were only 2 votes against, one from Karen herself and one from her best friend standing next to her. That's it. The new board immediately spoke up, and decisions began to change right away. They decided to investigate Karen's finances and all the transactions she had made over the years. An unprecedented shift. All the violation notices Karen had issued, the unreasonable decisions she had enforced, were immediately suspended. I stood there, unable to believe what I had just witnessed. This civil coup, though dramatic, brought an extraordinarily sweet feeling. Karen had lost all power, and we had regained justice. This neighborhood would never be the same again. After the coup, I decided to step back. Since Karen's removal, I no longer had any interest in the neighborhood politics. They could handle it on their own. I just wanted to live a peaceful life, away from the endless power struggles. The brick walls I built not only separated Karen, but also protected me from the chaos of endless disputes. I just needed space to breathe. But life always has a way of not letting you escape your past so easily. One late afternoon, as I sat in the chair in the yard, watching the clouds drift by, Karen showed up. She entered like a storm, with a bitter look on her face, no longer the powerful woman she once was. She didn't come to apologize or admit any mistakes. Karen came to confront me, as if there was something left that could still make her fear me. "Johnson, don't think I'll let this go. What you did, I won't forget," she sneered, trying to maintain some pride. I looked at her, not in a rush to reply. She had made the biggest mistake of her life by not knowing when to stop. And as she was about to continue with another empty threat, something unexpected happened. The new board walked in, holding financial reports, and I immediately sensed the change in the room's tense atmosphere.